In this video, we are going to talk about Planet Zoo 2 and 5 major improvements required to make it a great game. However, it's gonna be different because we are doing this in 2 scenarios. Special thanks to our sponsor of today's video and the sponsor of the channel. Instant Gaming is a wonderful platform on which you can get your favorite games to a great value. You've got 24/7 support, you've got over 10,000 games at your hand, and you can find them very simple via a search bar, just like our Planet games over here. Or if you fancy, have a look at Cities, for example. Everything is here, including all the DLCs you wish to have. And today there's also the Black Friday deal starting, so make sure to check out if you get them for even better deals. These 2 scenarios are defined by when Planet Zoo is gonna come out, and I'm gonna outline those 2 to you now, and there will be one bonus for both of them. Now, the first thing is to name those 2 scenarios. First one is going to be a release in 2025. That is only 1.5 years from now, and it would go into the announcement of 2 Planet games within the next 2 years. As we do assume that the next year is going to be reserved for Planet Coaster 2, this could very well be a Planet Zoo 2. I know some of you may actually be a bit hesitant about that, because why would they do the same games all over? But I'm gonna explain in a second. The second scenario, which we're going to talk about after the first one, so in a couple more minutes, is going to be a release in about 4 to 5 years. So let's start with the first one being a release 2025, which is only 2 years from now. Let's first of all consider that with the beginning of Planet Coaster advertising, which would be Q1 next year, if that's a given, this game would end support by then. That means the end of lifetime of this game, not given by us as players, but as Frontier support, is somewhere in the middle of next year. That would equally mean over a year of a break. And these 5 major improvements I'm going to talk about now are defined by the fact that this is not a long time. You know, there's not a huge break in between. And I still think it might be the way how it's gonna come. I'm gonna talk at the very end of the video about how likely I find both scenarios and why, but now let's dive into the first point. The first one is going to be birds as full habitat animals. Yes, I think we don't even have birds in the game, like technically we have, but I mean free flying birds, as we have already talked about in the dedicated video. It's not a part of the game, so I think this should very well be a part of the game now, as this comes with a huge improvement overall, but I think the main mechanics are already in the game. Speaking of the main mechanics, full aquatic integration, including aquariums, including better versions of these small exhibits, including better versions of diving, is required to make it better and doable in this time frame. So full aquatic definitely goes as my second point. The third one is something I have been requesting from the beginning. I know it's maybe not on the top list of many, but it definitely is on the top list for me, and that would be staff vehicles. I am tired of those staff members running 10,000 kilometers through your zoo and through big habitats. If you make a multi-species habitat like a savanna area or something like that, they go with their poover for A to B for a kilometer or something. That is unnecessary. It's not how zoos work. They have small golf carts or something to do that, which wouldn't only be a cool integration. It's basically already in the game Jurassic World Evolution 1 and 2 with the rangers, so just give it to us, you know. The fourth one, and maybe the most important one to make the game a better game, is the balancing of conservation credits. I know this has been a topic in the past I have talked about a lot, but I think it still is a deal breaker for me to enjoy it really as a management game. Money still buys everything, and so does conservation credits, because, you know, the farms of animals have been there after 2 days and never left. So there is a huge problem with this, because the conservation credits don't really play a role in the game. It's just a second currency that exists in the parallel world, and after a given time, as you have the first farm, like credit farm, on your hands, there is no reason for you to consider either both. You either have money or not. So I think the conservation credits need to be connected to other permits, which would mean that, you know, some animals only are able to be get if the certain education level is reached, or a certain education level of your staff, for example, the skill level of your staff have to be given. Like, for example, imagine you can only have gorillas if you've got 3 at least 4-star skilled keepers. That's so much more interesting. And then you need these conservation credits maybe also to train your staff members, and there's also a limit of how many you can use from them, and there's a limit to how many animals you can sell from one zoo, for example, to, you know, stop these farms from being existent. Now, I think there's a huge chance to make a big improvement in that area. The last one for my first scenario is going to be the redo of the blueprint system. Now, the redo of the blueprint system for me personally is so important, again, as an addition to the balancing of conservation credits, because I think this is a deal breaker for many people, specifically casual players. I've already talked about that in my video about why Planet Zoo isn't a great game for casuals. If you haven't seen that one, make sure to check it out. If I remember, I'm going to put this to the info bubble to the top right now. I think it is absolutely important to give a better access for people in the game, and I think there's a super easy solution. If people create blueprints, give them the chance to define a specific tag, not only to sort it, but also to give access to it. What do I mean by that? Is pretty simple. You have researched, let's say, the Twilight theme, okay? And then someone built a Twilight asset for you, and you downloaded that from the workshop. If this person who built that blueprint did use a single piece from another set that you haven't researched, you cannot use the blueprint, which is stupid, because we all know that they are able to give pieces that you even didn't purchase via DLC. You can even open parks that use DLC items that you don't even own, okay? So the system is in the game available. So my suggestion there would also be just give the people access to those blueprints. The only thing is they can't access the blueprint to edit it. So they can't do the trick like, look at that, I put down the blueprint and now I can take these pieces out. No, but this is not how people use blueprints. They slap them down to use the blueprint and not to take it apart, you know, in a casual manner. And this is what definitely is required. Now, that's part 1. Scenario 1 is done. Let's go to scenario 2, a release in 4 to 5 years from now. You have to imagine that all of the previous points I mentioned for the short-term release are somewhat already integrated or in a different way. You'll notice that, but take those all as already granted for the future version, and we now go into the 5 major improvements if the game is released in 4 to 5 years. Number 1, a full integration of birds and aquatics in the base game. That, my friends, is a huge difference, and I think it's absolutely required. We need a complete change in the approach of the game. At the moment, Planet Zoo is mega habitat mammal focused game. That's the truth. The game is focused on habitat mammals, primates, animals that live on the land. That's it. No air, not like aquatics has been baked into it after a while, but it's not meant from the base game, and you can still feel that even though it has been improved. There has to be a major overhaul and make those 3 things one, okay? It has to feel organic, and it doesn't in this current state. The second point is an entire redesign of the staff behavior, including multiple gates and multiple jobs. This is something I just thought about so much more in the last couple of weeks when I was doing Leafy Lake. I think there's a huge chance wasted over here. So first of all, having a completely redesign of staff behavior will include vehicles and different jobs, because imagine you have got a keeper at the moment which does different types of jobs. So you have got a veterinarian, which is nice, but you have different keepers. You've got trainers, you've got normal keepers, you've got caretakers, you've got medics, but you also have like support for the medics. And my idea would be to not have a vet or a staff member like we have it right now, like a vet or a let's say an educator or a keeper. Let's have 2 or 3 types, and then build a skill set for them to, one becomes the veterinarian, the other one becomes the trainer, the other one becomes the educator, the other one becomes the, let's say, mammal trainer, the other one the aquatics trainer, the other one the birds trainer, and you also have to research these things for them and put them into different trainings, for example. I think this will give so much more depth to the staff system, the research tree, and just in general how you approach a zoo, because that would also give you a lot more to think about to lay out your areas. You know, it's not only putting down 1 million keepers and then let's go. You also have to make sure that in each area of the zoo you have certain skill sets available to if something happens. I think this would be beautiful to make the game so much more better without actually going too much into hardcore programming or so. I think it's something that could be done rather quickly, but it would require quite a while to get the strategy and stuff right. Next point is my personal favorite, the redesign of climbing. Oh my god. So let me just first of all put in something as it's a fact. The climbing locomotion system may very well be the hardest thing to get right in a zoo game, or in a game where animals are in, basically. I don't know how much AI will change the game here, but in 4 to 5 years there can be a lot of improvements happening. But the major improvement for me is a completely different base approach of it. I like what they've tried to do with Planet Zoo. It is a major improvement over any other zoo game we had in the past. The freedom of creativity and the way how you can build climbing frames is ridiculous. It is amazing, and there is nothing in the world that could take this system away from me as it is right now. I love it because I love the bravery that Frontier showed with this move, and it's definitely better than anything you can imagine being done 2019 and pre-2019 when the game has been developed. But to be honest, I think there are better ways of implementing it. The more you think about it, it would be so much better to give us specific climbing items that are fully integrated into their locomotion, where you know that the glitches are very, very rare, and then let us then take these elements and style them afterwards with pieces that have no hitbox to the climbing, for example. I think this would be an absolute, like, let's say we have some rope pieces, we've got, like as it is right now, the enrichment pieces that we have in the enrichment category as climbing pieces. These things should be hard-coded so that the animals can absolutely spot-on use them. Everything that is in the scenery set should not have an effect. I like what they did, as I said, but if you just consider them having no effect on the hitboxes, you can still do everything you do right now. The only difference is that it would look absolutely flawless and nice, and would also fulfill their enrichment need, for example, and you don't have to trick the game into different things in order to make them climb everywhere. And I think this would mostly implement very nice climbing on ropes and stuff with some dynamics, and even maybe animation of a rope. That would be also absolutely sick. Never mind, let's go to the next one, which is another big one, and that is a overhaul of the permits and money system. I already talked about conservation credits, so you can check mark that one. I exactly mean the same by that, but I would go even further into the entire money system and add to the calculation even permits of the region you are in. So let's say you have a region where it would be absolutely horrendous to get penguins in, just as an example, or like polar bears or whatever. And then, so you can't just get them, or you can only get them in a very late stage of your development with like a huge rating and with a huge skill level, and just in general. Also, money isn't everything, so I think there would need to be other achievements you have to unlock during the period of playing in order to get some permits, you know. For example, I like the milestone system in City Skylines, where you're only allowed to expand your area when you have reached a certain XP level. And if you take that and put that into Planet Zoo, I don't want to restrict the space. I don't know, that wouldn't really mean much for the game, but you could actually restrict the animals that you can buy, you know, so that you can't start your zoo right off with a lion, for example, or whatever, you know. I think there are ways of doing this, and I think this would be something really nice. And last but not least, before we get into the bonus one, is actual weather impact. Yeah, we have weather in the game, right? We have snow, we've got rain, and we've got cool areas and hot areas, and we've got shade, and we have a lot, and it feels like, wow, the weather is integrated super well, but it is not. It is a visually insanely pleasing element of the game, but it doesn't really change the game apart from some minor little things. And this really annoys me, because that is one of those things that is not restricted by computing power, development power, or whatever. This is just, in a way, a missed opportunity. And if you take the time, not only will it look so much better, but you could actually improve this by putting in realistic seasoning into a game. Realistic seasons that have a huge effect on what the people wear, where the people come from, what the people require, how many animals you can have outside, how likely it is that the animals are outside, how long the day is, for example, because day and night cycle doesn't change over seasons, which is ridiculous. So all these things together would make the game so much more enjoyable. And the problem, though, is what they have right now. And I, in this sense, I do understand this. The way the game works with timing, like that a full month is set to a full duration of closing and opening the zoo, doesn't work with the seasoning idea. So you would have to go back to the drawing board and create a different system. So maybe that the day-night cycle is not a month, but actually just a week or so, for example, in order to make it easier to also switcheroo the people through the zoo that have different clothing, for example. Even though I wouldn't mind if they just snap and have something different on. I wouldn't mind, actually. But to make it even better, from, let's say, if you are like a temperate European area, that from October on, you would see every guest who is joining from the second week of October, for example, is wearing winter clothing slowly, you know, and then from, let's say, February on, people are stopping to wear winter clothing, and with the peak of June, July, they will have the, you know, least clothing. So stuff like that could work absolutely fine. Now, you know, I've done both scenarios now. Let's go to the bonus one, because that one for me personally would be important to both, but just the extension of how much could be done in this system would differ. And this bonus one is the redesign of enrichment and education. Oh my goodness me. The education system, let's start with that one, is absurdly good when you ask me how much we have in the game available. But it doesn't feel as one. It feels like a weird bucket of different tapes putting onto it to keep it not leaking, and then you've got a lot in this bucket, but you can't even see what is in there because everything has been thrown in after each other. What I mean by that is, the education system at this point is mega. You've got tours, you've got educator talks, you've got roaming educators, you've got boards, you've got sound elements, you've got educational boards that are having these different types of education, like the deforestation and stuff like that. And you even now have the guided tours, and you have like the stands where people can sit down and watch not shows but educational talks. That is mega. But it doesn't feel like one. It doesn't feel like the zoo is doing education as a whole. It feels like slapping down things next to each other in order to reach a certain level of education by whatever. You can't really tell. And all these like areas of influence, I mean, I know why you do that. But honestly, that's not how it works, you know? And I think this needs an entire redesign how education works. I like the stuff that you have to research an animal, first of all, to get more education points for that. That can stay the same. But the way how you do that, how you put different educational boards in the zoo and how their importance is measured, I think there are so many ways to make it better. For example, to increase an overall area effect. So also these kind of overlapping things. I don't really know why this is a thing. Just make it a heat map, you know? The better the education is created around a habitat, the heat map is increasing for the people roaming around the habitat, and then you can put the icing on the cake by putting backstage tours in, educational tours in, and stuff like that. That would be amazing, so it all feels a lot more integrated. And obviously the reason why it isn't integrated is because it wasn't thought as one from the beginning. It has been an additional content required by people and requested by people, and then, you know, fortunately and thankfully done by Frontier, but it isn't one coherent system, in my opinion at least. If you think different, you can comment down below, but I think it's not. And the second part of it is the redesign of the enrichment, which kind of goes into the educational stuff as well, but also the way enrichment works in certain ways is weird. So for example, if you take the climbing, yet again, the climbing enrichment is weird. So sometimes animals will climb to go from A to B, which then is not considered as enrichment, and they have a dedicated climbing item to make them feel enriched, which is super stupid. That's just not how it works, you know? And also, to really get the icing on the cake is I would love to get my own enrichment item creation tool. So many animals have pre-given, things they have to do. For example, scratching. Scratching is a behavior that can be done on so many items. And if you give me a system where I know how the animation looks, or we have, like, say, 3 variants of the animation, and you give me a safe zone in which I can plop my item that I then just checkmark as educational item for scratching, that would give me the option to create my own enrichment items and make them usable. How amazing would that be? And that would also offer us a way to research not items, but research different enrichment types, because our staff members are skilled enough to please the animals with these types of enrichments. So I think that would be a huge win for the game. And again, in both scenarios, it is doable in different extents, obviously, but doable. And now let's take a little look into those 2 scenarios again and the likeliness. So first of all, why I did choose to go with 2 scenarios is that in my head, the idea grew that Planet Zoo 2 couldn't be that far away because of the situation Frontier is in. Now, just to give you a bit of an idea why this was just recently for me personally, Frontier very randomly dropped that there's another Planet game coming in 2025 as well. We already knew for a long time that there's a new Planet game coming in 2024, and normally Frontier isn't really rushing with announcing other stuff for the year after. Normally you would have heard about it maybe next year in like April or March or whatnot, but maybe given the situation at Frontier with all the layoffs and the gaming industry just in general, who knows if they needed to change plans, and they never planned to announce another Planet game in the second part. They never planned to have a second Planet game next to maybe a Planet Coaster 2, and maybe we were all wrong with thinking about a different Planet game. The more I think about different Planet games, and Lady did a fantastic video about 2 potential options, but to be honest, this would be a risk for Frontier at this point, a huge risk, to be honest, because as we do know, Frontier sometimes has some issues, specifically with management and stuff like that. And both of the games that Lady presented would definitely have an issue if they're not well enough in management. Now, it would actually come with a huge risk for Frontier, but doing decent enough, great successors to 2 of their most successful owned IPs would open up a huge flow of income. And if they're both very close to each other and they can both be fed with a DLC strategy as they do it right now, that would actually be something to save their backs a little, and bring them back into the right direction. However, do I think it's more likely than the in 4 to 5 years option? Well, I don't, because I think Planet Zoo is a game that will still sell super well. I think it's very much more likely that the support doesn't end with the announcement of Planet Coaster 2. I do think they still go on, because even if they're not going too much into let's say the full bird or full aquatic area, there is still so much to do. With the integration of walkthrough exhibits, there's a huge chance to bring a lot of animals in. You can even make dedicated packs for only this one. You can make dedicated semi-aquatic packs still. There are a lot of semi-aquatic animals in the world that can be added to the game, and let's not talk about all the other animals that can still be added to the game. So there is a huge field for them to still earn money with Planet Zoo as a game. And to be fair, as a calculation, would they really earn that much more if they bring out a Planet Zoo 2 already? I doubt it, But I think there's a significant chance that also scenario 1 is gonna be realistic. However, I personally see the second scenario a lot more likely, and I would really go for like the 4 to 5 year frame. Maybe even 4 years, I don't know. 8 years after is a good ratio, I guess. So that is something most games nowadays you see after 8 years. I mean, if, for example, Planet Coaster 2 would actually come out next year, it's another 8 years. City Skylines 2 is 8 years, and a lot of these games is 8 years. If you're not GTA, you are actually 8 years. 8 years is a very good thing between two games of the same, like with the successor. And so I think it's more likely with the second one. If I would rate it right now, it's for me like 60-40. Or maybe even 65-35%, leaning towards scenario 2. But now I talked enough for the video. It's a very long video, so I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed making this video because these thoughts actually grew in my head so much the last couple of days that I was really looking forward to making this video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and now it's up to you. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think is more likely. Do you agree with my points? Do you have anything to add as a point? And if so, what would that be? And just in general, the only thing I can add is have a wonderful day. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing so, because that helps me out a lot, telling the freaking platform that I still love it and still love doing the stuff. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Have a good day, stay safe, and goodbye.